Hi everybody, welcome to the XX Files. I'm Leah and I'm joined by Sue. Hi Sue.
Hi, Leah. How's things?
Yeah, not bad, can't complain. I can, but I won't. We are joined by two of our friends, two women's rights advocates, two women fighting for children's safeguards, brave women who speak out and have always spoken out and join us in the fight to return to reality, really. It's Nerissa and Millie. Hi.
Morning.
Hi.
Hello.
A lot's happened lately. Shall we talk about what's happening right now in the New South Wales Equality Bill that's been proposed?
You've been warning about this bill. Tell us the history of it, what it means, and why you are so concerned about it.
Thank you for having me on, Rowan. So this bill was introduced by independent MP Alex Greenwich last year in August into the New South Wales Parliament. It's set to be debated on the 8th of February. It includes a whole raft of incredibly concerning reforms. It's been introduced under the guise of equality for LGBT people, and yet at the same time undermines protections and rights for women and children. So there are too many things, to be honest, to discuss in relation to its content, because it amends a huge number of bills and introduces a huge number of amendments. But in particular, we're concerned about the introduction of sex self-ID, which will mean that anyone can change their legal sex, including children, and be considered as that sex for all intents and purposes under law. It also removes almost all of the remaining regulations and restrictions around prostitution, including coercing people into prostitution. That will be removed, as well as soliciting prostitution in or near schools, churches and hospitals. And it also introduces overseas commercial surrogacy, meaning that residents in New South Wales can go over to poor, disadvantaged countries and basically exploit women over there, rent their wombs, buy the children, bring them back to New South Wales, and that be entirely legal. It's been rushed through, to be honest, because it was introduced in August last year. It was announced at the end of last year that it will be debated in February, which is the first parliamentary sitting week of Parliament. There's been very little to no consultation with concerned women's and children's groups. Of course, there's been plenty of consultation with LGBT groups, particularly trans activists, including the likes of ACON, who are responsible for embedding gender ideology throughout Australian institutions like media, like business, like government. So, yeah, it's incredibly concerning, the content and the process surrounding it. And a lot of New South Wales residents don't even know that it's happening. And that's not their own fault at all, because it hasn't really been publicised. As I said, it's basically been rammed through.
Well, yeah, I don't recall this being an enormous election issue, so I don't think anyone was voting for this. But you mentioned self-ID. Does that mean we could have the situation where a man who identifies as a woman would end up in a female prison, for example, because we've already got that happening in Victoria?
That's exactly one of the ramifications, Rita. So men who identify as women will be able to have that legally recognised in law and be able to access, for example, female prisons, bathrooms, changing rooms, refuges, all those kinds of things. And there won't be anything that women can do to stop them from being included in those what should be female-only spaces. And for good reason. We know that things are broken up by sex because women are more at threat of biological males in relation to things like sexual assault or physical abuse or whatever. And so this bill will effectively eradicate single-sex spaces.
It's just that, you know how with Queensland there was the public hearings before, and then the committee gets back to government and they recommend an outcome.
And that's why we've been listening to the submissions.
Yeah.
What you saying, Millie? What I didn't hear the first day. You sat through the first day.
The first day was Monique New on Twitter does a really good summary, because she actually sat in the room the entire day, which was amazing. And just saying things like, legalising prostitution is a good thing. Being able to pimp women is a good thing. Also, they talked about surrogacy, which is also a good thing. You know, so basically any way that you can make money off women's bodies is a good thing. And there was a guy, he said to the woman who was giving testimony about surrogacy, how he didn't understand how gender identity and surrogacy went together. And then he went, oh, but now I do. And I'm thinking, is that because it's both harmful to women and children, or is it because he just sees that it's depressing? But and then mostly it was a lot of the religious people there to talk about religious freedoms and schools and all of that stuff and how it will impact that.
Well, they say this bill would make New South Wales a better place for us from recognising rainbow families, protecting us from discrimination at school and in the workplace, and securing government IDs that reflect who we are.
Yeah, I think Rainbow Family started day 2, which was, yes, kind of stomach churning, really.
Was that the person who said 4% of all lesbians reject trans women? So 96% of lesbians are sexually attracted to men then?
Oh, they said some insane things. Sorry.
Yeah.
Where would they have got those statistics, honestly?
Yeah,
I
it's
know.
ridiculous. It
Yeah.
is absolutely ridiculous.
They also said puberty blockers are fully reversible.
They're still making that claim.
1% detransition rate.
Yeah, they said all the lying talking points. Yeah.
It's like the cult mentality hasn't gone away yet.
Well, obviously none of them have looked at the CAS reports or the WPATH files or the Mayo Clinic findings. So, it's just more of the same that they've been saying for years that just continue to be debunked.
Well, they referred to Ian Hickey. I'll
God.
put a clip of Ian Hickey up here.
Professor, answer me this. You're happy to see a 15-year-old girl go and have a double mastectomy, are you?
No, not necessarily. And as is the case in Australia, again, the case in Australia about kids at certain ages moving from just blocking to actually hormonal treatment to then potentially surgical is taken typically in a very considered way and not at early ages.
So at 15 years old, a child who is not legally deemed responsible enough to drive a car is somehow deemed medically fit enough to decide to mutilate her body surgically.
The language, no, your language used, first use language of mutilation, okay? The attempt to vilify the doctors involved and vilify the people involved, I think is entirely inappropriate.
I'm not
All
vilifying
medical
anybody,
situations-
I'm saying it's mutilation.
For example,
if you change your
50
mind 4 years later and you've lost your breasts, you'd be pretty unhappy about it as
At
well.
15 years old, children enter into the process of starting to be involved in their own medical decision-making around contraception, around their own health. Children get involved at 15, having to make decisions about all sorts of surgical procedures and other areas affecting their health. You try to make fun of the academic things.
But
It's
I
true.
don't think it's funny
You've
at all.
already tried.
I think
You've already tried to dismiss
the casualties
me.
involved in this are incredibly sad. But
And
I
the
want
casualties-
you to address the real issue.
I want you to address the issue of the mental health harms of no action, of the systematic data about reductions in suicidality.
And he said the CAS report proves that Australia is the correct method. How does he reach that conclusion?
Because he's arguing, isn't he, that it's all a different model or a pathway here in Australia. Apparently Australian and New Zealand children are different to English, British children in the UK.
Yeah. We respond to the drugs differently, apparently.
It's diabolical that he can, and not just him, but others, the Psychiatrists Association, whoever it was that came out with that podcast, also saying the same lies with nothing to substantiate their claims. Just that, we don't do it like that.
Yet they were bragging how they followed the Tavistock model. So they just chop and change. They must just be really evil, horrible people, because they know what the CAS report said. They may, it's just lies. They know about the WPATH files, but they never tell the truth. Make up their own statistics.
Yeah, well, look at Maple Leaf House in New South Wales, another example of they've got no records of what's happening with their patients. I mean, how is that? That's astounding.
And what does Maple Leaf House do? That's a gender clinic.
Yeah, that's the gender clinic, the big one in New South Wales in the Hunter Valley. So that's been on the radar of of women and others like Bernard Lane for years, and Greg Donnelly, the politician in New South Wales, who's trying to put a stop to all this gender affirming care, which is just medical and child abuse, and reality denying abuse. But now it's actually become it's been in the news lately that this Maple Leaf House hasn't been keeping clinical records. So how can we even, if they were to be audited, as they should be able to be, to check efficacy of these treatments? They can't even do that. It's
and at the same
scandalous.
time, they're growing. Like their patient intake is growing.
What do you do? Like, how do you? It's so maddening.
Maddening, yeah.
What needs to happen for Australia, the Australian government, to actually accept that this is child abuse? Yeah,
We're only exchange of government. We're only lucky that we've got state elections coming up soon in Queensland and WA, and then a federal election will be within the next 12 months or so.
Yeah, so it should be May next year.
So we're in a good position in that respect, and we just
do
need
you
to
see a change of government really helping this?
Yeah.
Well,
sorry,
got to be better than the current situation, and we need to be educating these politicians because they just don't get it, and they don't. They're all just too busy. The ministers are too busy. They're either totally captured and a waste of our time and breath, like Minister for Women Shannon Fentiman as a prime example, but others just don't understand the issue and they're too busy with other things. It's not even top of their agenda or anything.
It's strange because it's hard to believe that you've got any politician that supports what they're doing to kids. It's just, did anyone see Phil Guy's latest video?
The thing with that CAS report, though, is it says the rationale for early puberty suppression remains unclear, with weak evidence regarding the impact on gender dysphoria, mental or psychological health. The effect on cognitive and psychosexual development remains unknown. So it's still saying that there could be some good reason to suppress puberty, and it's basically saying gender dysphoria is real, and I don't think there's been much proof that it is. So I just don't know how we're ever going to get out of this if this whole mindset.
It's psychotherapy, isn't it? It's a social contagion for a start. So these kids, if they did have some therapy, they'd get to the bottom of it, that it is just a social contagion. They never had body dysmorphia until they were told they could have been born in the wrong body. So, I mean, there's been a history of young boys that had body dysmorphia as a child, but very, very rare. But now the only way to get through to it is to find out who's really in need of this stuff is to go through therapy, but they're just the affirmation model just straight away.
Show me one child who went through puberty and didn't feel awkward, uncomfortable, embarrassed, confused. All of these hormones have been coming into your body, and then the changes of your body, regardless of whether or not you've got gender dysphoria or body dysmorphia, it was awkward. It's shit. It's a shit time.
Yeah.
But you get through it. And as we know, what is it? 90% of kids who apparently have gender dysphoria will desist if permitted to go through their natural puberty. That's what fixes it.
Yeah.
And if the kids, instead of being told, oh, you might be trans, then, when you're trans, you get all the special treatment. The kids get special treatment. So kids that are formerly awkward at school or, whatever, suddenly they're special. So the incentive or the temptation to identify as that, and for that to give you an explanation of why you're feeling the way you're feeling, like it's heinous that that's how it's being sold. Absolutely diabolical, but that's exactly what's happening, isn't it?
Yeah, I think a lot of us can actually relate to it as well, because it's so easy to see how a kid could go down that way.
Yeah, especially for the tomboys amongst us who,
yeah,
we're happy to play with the boys and do the boys' activities and be a bit boyish and get dirty and, all of the things that aren't considered to be girly pursuits, play footy and climb trees and, oh gosh, heaven forbid, wear shorts and get dirty.
Do the fun things.
Yeah.
You can totally understand why you might be like, oh yeah, I must actually be a boy, because that's what they're drumming into them at every opportunity.
Another thing about this CAS report is it says, for most young people, a medical pathway will not be the best way to manage their gender-related distress. I think it's great that a lot of people are talking about it and it's brought it out into the open. Obviously, NHS is going back on on the puberty blockers and stuff. But don't you think that just makes it sound like, well, some people will need their puberty suppressed, you could be that one.
But that's what they need to do, is they need to have control groups, and there's none, it's just...
How can you ethically experiment on a child like that, though? You can't.
Well, they're doing it, aren't they? Some of the countries have got a control group where they're not just prescribing puberty blockers, but then they do have a control group that they're managing. I guess that's the real... I don't know how they come to that conclusion, but
I just think about every child that when they say when you think about things like that, every one of those children has a mother and a father that's probably so fucking worried about what is being done to that child. It's not like all the parents in this are happy to have their children on these things.
And that's
my worst nightmare.
That's like with Kat, though, that I saw at that inquiry, and when she was talking about the number of parents that are distressed, and she stopped because someone must have been, the committee was making snide remarks or laughing or something, because she pulled them up on it. So they just have this, they don't want to listen.
They don't want to listen, and they're self-righteous, and they think you're conspiracy theorists. The same thing happened in Queensland when we had the parliamentary committee into self-ID.
Yeah.
The way we were received as women's rights advocates with very valid concerns around self-ID, there were people on the committee scoffing. And then also one of the committee members, I think it was Jonty Bush.
Oh, yeah.
She was conversing back and forth on the live tweets that one of the gender extremists was doing, one of the transgender males, saying that he did well to put up or to make it through it. Like, she was sympathetic to this dude who thinks he's a woman and how it might have affected him.
Mm. We're all at the end of our rope with this now, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know that there was a trans-identifying male kicked out of day one of hearing.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, the one, yeah.
When the bishop,
Got up and said-
wasn't he a bishop or something, a religious leader, and he wasn't even a minute into his speech, and the trans extremists were sitting behind.
We sympathise with all efforts to discourage or forbid unjust discrimination against LGBT people. But there is a troubling anti-religious undercurrent.
That's a load of fucking bullshit! Not the church, not the state, only we decide our fate! Not the state, only we decide our fate! Equality! You understand? For the fucking safety of children, but you stood up for pedophiles! Fucking George Powell was a pedophile, you fucking fraud! Fraud! Shame fucking inquiry! No hesitation, no delay! Sex work on the ADA! Equality delayed! As equality denied! Equality delayed! As equality denied!
Yeah, God. When I keep hearing this 1% detransition as well, and you got more regret going for knee surgery than you have going for get your dick and balls chopped off.
But that myth is being debunked too. How they got that 1%. It's just garbage. I think I was listening to something with Helen Joyce yesterday, and she was explaining to John Anderson, former opposition leader, opposition leader.
So there's all these talking points, like, because I spend my life working on this, I know all the talking points by now. And one of them is that regret after transgender surgery is less than regret after keyhole surgery on your knee. They'll say it's less than 1%. But I used to work as a statistician. My degree is in maths and stats, and I did a PhD in mathematics, and then I worked for the Royal Statistical Society editing their magazine for some years. So although I wasn't somebody who did statistical studies, I was someone who used to have to explain them and write them up. And the first question you should always ask yourself about data is, how do they know? Like, I know, because it doesn't take long to find out, that none of the clinics anywhere in the world are following up their patients. So how could they know what the regret rate is? No, they don't know. And then they put out these studies, and when you look at the studies, first of all, they're just done online. Anyone who wants can fill it in online. So straight away, that's rubbish, because you haven't got any sort of a representative sample. You've got a biased sample. Doesn't matter how large the numbers are in that case. It could be 1 million people. If it's biased, it makes no difference. It's still a bad study. They are excluding, for example, one of the big studies that's often cited, very poor study, to say that there's very little regret, excludes detransitioners. You have to currently identify as trans to be eligible to fill it in. So you're like, you can fill it in as many times as you like. They aren't checking people's names. You can fill it in from abroad. Like, it's absolute garbage. And yet this is the sort of thing they cite. So I would offer this to your listeners as a general point, and not just about this one. Whenever somebody tells you that they know a numerical answer to something, ask, how could they know that? Because sometimes it's clear immediately that they simply can't know it, that there's just no way of finding out, for example, how many people identify as trans. Like, how do we know that? Who is asking that? It's been put on a census question in Canada and the UK. Are the questions well designed? Do people know what they mean? And in the answer in the UK is absolutely they did not know what it meant. So the pattern of answers to whether you're trans turned out that Muslim people who don't speak English are some of the most highly likely to identify as trans, which is just so implausible, and it's so obviously about a language issue. Yeah, so that's just one example. Like, they don't know. Why do they not care about it? I think, if you're a detrans, you are the personification of the thing they say isn't possible, which is that you thought you knew yourself, but you didn't. Like, they say everybody knows themselves, everyone has a gender identity, only the person themselves can know their gender identity. A detrans person is someone who is mistaken, and that suggests that anybody could be mistaken. So they're a devastating blow to the heart of the foundation, like absolutely central to the whole way of thinking. And if you allow yourself to entertain doubt on that, you could doubt anything. So they're treated like apostates, actually. They're treated worse than I am, and I'm treated pretty badly. So I'm just a heretic, but they're apostates. And every totalizing religion, and I do regard this as a godless neo-religion, hates apostates more than anyone. And they are shunned, they are treated as if they'd left the Mormons or, you know, the Seventh-day Adventists, or whichever one of the American churches it is that really goes after Scientologists. That's the one I'm thinking of. They're treated like they've left Scientology, which is not well.
Yeah. So they haven't got that 1% by doing proper follow-up.
There's no way it can be 1%.
Exactly.
There's no way it can be 1%. You're getting your genitals removed and inverted and bits and pieces. There's no way that can only be 1% there.
Yeah.
Regretting that.
I remember watching this wonderful Gen Spec presentation on the regret rates, and it was quite some time ago, but he opened with the fact that there's like a 14% regret rate on Brazilian butt lifts. So he was just saying, and then he went through the statistics, he went through the stats, because that's obviously what he's good at doing, and just completely debunked them. It was really good. I'll find the link.
And that's just with a butt lift.
14% Brazilian butt lift regret rate. So I think if you're cutting off your dick and balls and your breasts, then there's probably not really likely to be
The
1%.
same, if not more. Because that's exactly all it is. It's just a different type of plastic surgery. And it should, these surgeons are so unethical that they could, one, offer these surgeries in the first place, and that some poor sod is going to be gullible enough and vulnerable enough and hoodwinked enough to pay the thousands of dollars or else under Medicare to get these procedures.
All right, so we're off to clinic now to see some patients. So my specialty is actually gender surgery, and so people ask me all the time, like, what is gender surgery? And so as a specialty, it really encompasses, even more than just plastic surgery. It can be head-to-toe operations. For example, facial feminization, tracheal shave, which is the Adam's apple surgery. My focus, though, is on chest surgery for transgender patients, as well as the genital surgeries. So the chest surgery would be like breast augmentation for the transgender women and mastectomies for the transgender men. The operations that I perform are called vaginoplasty. And so that's essentially the creation of a fully functional vagina and vulva from the male anatomy. And so these patients are able to have sex, they're able to have orgasms potentially. The reconstructions are very aesthetic and look very natural. And so that's one of my favorite operations, and so that's what gender surgery actually.
And then you think, how sorry do you feel for these kids and young people who are actually lining up to get the surgeries, thinking that they're in any way not experimental?
So people often ask me if I am willing to do gender surgery on minors. And the short answer is yes. I know there's a lot of surgeons out there that say I have an age 18 cutoff for any gender surgery, but in my opinion, that's really to protect the surgeon, not the patient. And if you think about the suicide rates of the transgender population, 40% of transgender people will attempt or commit suicide in their lives. So your classic example is going to be of a young, late teenage boy, transgender boy, so assigned female at birth, has taken hormones, now has developed a very masculine body in terms of muscle, beard, a deep voice, and this particular patient want to play sports and be in the locker room with their friends, except they have breast tissue. And so I'm not going to force this child to live through high school in the locker room with their buddies with breast tissue and be self-conscious and potentially suicidal in order to protect my license. A lot of surgeons will say, I'll just wait till age 18, but you know what? A lot of these patients may not make it to age 18. The suicide rate is just too high for me to just have an arbitrary cutoff rate of age 18. So as long as it's the right patient, the right family support, the mental health clearance is there, I have no problem operating on minors.
And we've seen the photos. We know how horrific these procedures are, And
by then they're so intertwined with the cult. By the time they've had this surgery, you have to think about how enmeshed this ideology is within this person by the time they've had a fake dick fashioned out of their arm. They don't, even when it goes horribly wrong, they still say that they don't regret it. Even when they have to use a catheter forever, they still say, it's not my surgeon's fault. A lot of them, they have the operation, the surgeon doesn't even want to see them again.
Yeah.
Anyone should go onto reddit.com and type in the word fallow, PHALLO, and have a look, because
Don't do it.
I know, don't, but do.
But yeah, you need to, but it's horrific. So upsetting.
Did anyone else read the Crimea River thread that she wrote about family members of people that had lobotomies, saying that it was good for them because they couldn't. Her theory is that they just can't come to terms with the harm that's been done to the person. So I think that probably plays a role as well.
Yeah.
Oh, especially when you've got parents who are now having to accept the damage that they've helped inflict on their own children.
Yeah.
And a lot of these girls that go to get these surgeries as well, they don't have anyone to go with them, which is a sure sign that the parents are just too traumatized to even, well, they cut the parents off, don't they, if they don't agree. And it's just, I don't know how we're going to get there, how we're going to stop these. I used to be, you know, as long as you're old enough to do what you want with your own body, then fine. But I don't even think that anymore. I think they're so unethical. Yeah. It's taken advantage of someone who's so mentally ill they want to have body parts chopped off. It's just not good for society. I think they should all be banned.
Yeah. Well, like we've said, there's no other area. Like, you can't just go into the surgeon's office and say, I want my leg chopped off. Don't want my feet anymore. I'm pretty sure you can't just do that, right?
Yeah.
Because they would think you were very mentally unwell.
Yeah.
So why isn't this any different? It's not. It's exactly the same.
Isn't the analogy we generally use is we don't give lap band surgeries to anorexics. Like, we don't affirm.
Yeah.
Insane.
Yeah.
Hopefully we will be able to look back and say that was a mental time, but I just hope this doesn't just become the norm, that you can just go and get these, because there's always going to be a queue of people going to get them.
Yeah, but the thing is, they've tried to suppress information to the public, so they can't stop that forever. More and more people find out. So there should be a day, an amnesty, where everyone can say what they think.
Well, that's why these hate speech laws are being introduced, isn't it? Because
well, they're in Queensland now. They started last Monday, and Edie wrote a good article on that as well. It came out this week. So, but that was brought in by stealth, so the public really don't know that they could be breaking the hate speech laws and be fined and/or prison and put into prison for it. Like in Canada, their hate speech laws, they're looking at making it, you know, not everyone, obviously, but some people could go to prison for life under their hate speech laws. So for misgendering someone,
just for correctly sexing someone.
Yeah.
Yeah. But did you hear the story about Spain? Because of that I know it's Schadenfreude, but the first person to be done for the misgendering new hate speech laws was a man that had the full snip, the full surgery, telling a man that hadn't had the full surgery that he wasn't a real woman. So that was kind of interesting. I'm sure that the laws were intended to punish women, but the first time it definitely
I love it so much. It's like the whole thing has to just eat itself eventually, because it's so ridiculous. So I saw that story and I just thought, beauty.
Well, we have a speaker's corner on the 19th, so we'll see what happens then. Queen's Park Gardens, 19th of May, 12:30 p.m.
Yeah.
And it's interesting too with that, Leah, like obviously you video it and it's live streamed and people can watch back. So there's no denying that we said what we said, because there's the video evidence.
But the thing is also, like, you know how I contacted the Attorney General last October and gave examples of the sort of things we do, and they have just point blank refused to
give you an answer.
So you've actually asked the people who you need to ask, what can I or can't say under these new hate speech laws? And so they've completely ignored you, or they've given you a standard reply?
No, nothing.
Nothing.
And I've sent them an email a few times. They wouldn't respond to that. They did initially. So I think it was in December. I sent them an email and said, you know, how many days have you got to respond to my correspondence? Because, you know, every government department has a KPI, a key performance indicator. And they said, and they actually said at the time that it had virtually been written and I'd receive it soon. And I hadn't heard anything. So I think it was late January, I contacted them again. They just ignored it. And then I rang up and they gave me the runaround for 37 minutes, spoke to someone from the Attorney General's office. Then he said he would call me back, never got a phone call back. So they're not going to respond to it. But the law itself is so unclear that we don't know if we'll be breaking the law. So it has to be tested. So surely if they then investigate you and go, well, no, you've breached the law, well, where is it written?
Yeah.
How could I breach the law that's not specific? And I've asked questions of it and you refuse to answer them. So
how can the people who are supposedly running the country be so fucking stupid?
Yeah.
Like, it's just unbelievable how little. Like,
I don't even think that that's stupid. They're just, they've got no respect for their constituents whatsoever. You know, that's the thing that absolutely floors me.
It just seems the government is prepared to break the law to do whatever they want. Like with the Australian government asking their employees what sexual orientation they are, and that's completely against the law. So Jim Chalmers is my local federal member, and I wrote to him about the breach of the Australian privacy principles. And I actually said, so I rang them up, they said, can you put it in writing? This is back in March, and which I did. And I said in the correspondence to them, my background is in privacy when I was in government. Then I get a response back from Jim Chalmers saying, no, they haven't breached the Australian privacy principles. That's a lie. Because I rang up the office of, Information Commissioner, the Australian Information Commissioner, spoke to them twice. They verified twice that's in breach of the law. But Jim Chalmers' office comes back and says, oh, no, we've done nothing wrong. So, but they know they have. They know they've breached the law, but they will not admit it. So, and this is the treasurer of the country. He wouldn't have written the response. So it would have been his staffers, but they should know privacy. And if they didn't, then they should have looked into it, because I actually said to them it was in breach of APP3. So they didn't have far to go to look whether or not they had or not. And this
Sue, you've been working in government for ages and like to do with government, haven't you? Has it always been like this? Like this much liars and dishonesty?
Not in public administration. Public administration with this issue. Are they being told, oh, yeah, we can break the law? So just ignore it.
Are they just making it up as they go, aren't they?
Yeah, but why are they doing it for the trans with the gender ideology? Why are they prepared to break the law for this minority?
I don't know, because it seems like these people hate the government. Like, they hate Albo, and he bends over backwards for
And
them.
they hate the police. When you look at all their conversations, they hate any authority in this country. Yet people that are bending over backwards for them and breaking the law and lying are doing everything they want. But these people hate authority. So it's just weird. It's just weird that the government is prepared to break its own law.
Yeah, it's just weird that the government are calling men women. Millie was at the tickle.
They are the only women.
Yeah. Millie was at the Tickle v Giggle court case, soaking up the atmosphere.
Roxanne Tickle and Sally Grover are on opposing sides of a divisive court case that prompted demonstrations outside the federal court.
We demand our equal rights! We demand our equal rights!
Inside, Ms Tickle is arguing she was discriminated against on the basis of her gender identity by Ms Grover's now defunct social media app Giggles for Girls. Ms Tickle says she's lived as a woman since 2017, telling the court basically up until this very instance, everybody has treated me as a woman. Her barrister argues in this case the respondents have repetitiously and persistently denied that the applicant is a woman. Giggle, the court's heard, required subscribers to submit a photograph to be initially inspected by artificial intelligence to ascertain whether the user was a woman. Ms Grover's barrister says it was a place for women to get advice from other women in a female-only environment. Giggle's side argues the platform intended to achieve substantive equality between men and women as per a section of the Sex Discrimination Act, but Ms Tickle's team disputes that would include the exclusion of transgender women from an app. The judge has noted the degree of interest in the case, acknowledging it gives rise to strongly held views and emotions. That's as the courtroom overflowed with people hoping to watch the proceedings.
This is a small group of people who are trying to take away our rights as transgender people.
Women have single-sex spaces for a reason. They don't need them all the time, but they need to know they're there.
Well, it was 3 very big days. It was pretty odd flying down on the same plane as someone I've known for about 20 years who was flying down to be on the other side.
Wow.
Yeah. So the first day I arrived there was no room in the courthouse. So I handed out flyers out the front with some other wonderful women. The TRAs were there with their big PA and I was just losing it. Like I couldn't stop laughing because they were claiming things like that we personally were responsible for the genocide in Gaza and we were personally responsible for racism towards Black women in America, and just like the longest bows you could possibly think of to draw, and just go how. But they did eventually wrap it up with we were responsible for making them get up early to come and yell at us, which I could at least finally see there was some element to. And they did walk off chanting "We'll be back," and thankfully they didn't come back.
And did they even know who they were there to support, Millie?
I don't think so.
No.
No,
did they recognise him?
There was like pride and protest from one of the unis.
And he walked in and they didn't even realise that he'd turned up.
No, they had no idea at all. They just very much got into screaming at the faces of Caroline and Louise, because big tall men pretending to be women screaming down into the faces of elderly lesbian ladies is always such a good look.
Yeah.
But any opportunity to scream abuse at women,
oh yeah,
that's where you'll find them.
Yeah, absolutely.
To tell us to shut up.
And then the Facebook, they did a call out on Facebook for the trans extremists to counter protests outside the court, and it was a pair of boxing gloves. So they're very overt about their violence,
inciting violence.
Yeah. So if we did that, can you imagine what would happen?
Oh, no, it wouldn't. Yeah, so they didn't come back the next 2 days, and I actually sat in the courthouse for the next 2 days. So, yes, I have listened to the Australian AHAT, Australian Human Rights Commission, say that biological sex doesn't exist anymore and it's not binary, and it's, I don't know what, that was...
It's still such a shame that it wasn't live streamed, because
I know
there was so much there that the majority of Australia will not hear, and not just Australia, the world.
Yeah,
and it was so important. It's so important what was being said, isn't it? The fact that it wasn't live streamed is just such a shame.
And I think it's because of that international interest, because a lot of Australians didn't know it was going on, but internationally they did. So to use the excuse they did to not live stream, they did not want people from overseas seeing
how insane our legal system is.
Yeah. And our own Human Rights Commission is completely off. Like, just some of the arguments, it was just, can't make it up.
We know that Tickle doesn't have much support outside, but did he have any support inside the courtroom?
There were 3 other people from my town who pretended I didn't exist. He's the only one that said hello to me on his way into the women's bathroom. So, you know, got acknowledgement from him, I suppose.
Isn't it crazy how the one place as well that you're meant to tell the truth in a court and they're calling him a she?
Yeah.
Just that alone.
Yeah.
What the hell has happened?
The 2-hour cross-examination of Sal was amazing. She was amazing. The lawyer representing Tickle just was shaking in her, you know, in rage that Sal just would not give an inch.
Sal's incredible.
It was just, read that transcript. It's just so worth it. It's just, buy the t-shirt.
Even just for the bit where his own legal team misgenders him several times.
3 times.
Can't make it up.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what happened there, Millie?
And the smelly balls soy candle bit is definitely a moment of history for it.
When they misgendered him, what happened inside? Like, was there a reaction, or did they?
There was some snickering. Well, when she started the cross-examination of Sal, she originally referred to Sal as Miss Tickle, and then Miss Giggle, and I went, "Oh, I'm sorry, Miss Grover," and even she had to laugh. So yeah, it was just it's really silly, but yeah, it's all in the transcripts and.
And what does everyone think of the chances here? Because
I was about to say that,
yeah.
Well,
the judge has said that he has to decide it based on the law as it stands.
Yeah, that's right. So he's got no choice.
And the law as it stands says that
Jason Tickle is a woman.
Man. Yeah.
However, there are a number of technicalities he could just throw it out on if he wanted to.
Oh, okay.
Really?
Yeah.
Explain.
Because they were messing up with direct and indirect discrimination, and you can't claim both. And he was really helping them clarify that throughout it. So I think there are a number of issues that if he wanted a way out, he could. The people that I was speaking with that are, you know, actually legal professionals were like, I wouldn't be counted. I wouldn't be making a guess. So yeah, it's really.
I'd hate to be that judge. Can you imagine, like, if he found in favour of Sal, what he would be for?
He's obviously someone that really loves the law. Like, when it was interesting him as a legal principal, he'd get really involved and ask questions like, so I'm not really sure what I think of him or take him. I'm hoping that maybe it won't just be blanket not in our favour, but I don't know.
But his life would be a living hell for him, because look at Dr. Cass, what she has had to endure from the trans mob because of the report that was released. She can't even go on public transport. It's too dangerous.
Yes, but he's about to move to Norfolk Island to be the Supreme Court judge there. So, you know, he's getting it.
Yeah, that's good. Maybe that's why he's.
So, yeah, we've got, it's really, I wouldn't call it.
Going to be
and
interesting.
why does it take so long to reach a decision in this?
I guess because you've got to research all your precedents so that you're you're prepared for if there is, you know, an appeal.
He's got to consider all the agreement, all the arguments as well. It's a big job. So it's not unusual for a judge to take a long time, especially, I guess, in something like this, because it's so historical as well. And it's the first case of its kind anywhere.
Yeah, and Tickle was asking for 200K.
Yep.
I know. Oh, my God.
Would he have come up with
Yeah.
that sum himself, or do you think that was his team?
Oh,
It was $100,000 in damages and $100,000 in aggravated damages. And it just, and his side is saying that his 8 emails to her and he's messaging her and he's calling her private phone were polite customer service inquiries. And all of a sudden the court is going, no, that's like harassment of a woman. And also she hasn't had a business for 2 years. He's destroyed it. This case is so flipped on its head.
Yeah, she should be, Sal's one that should be seeking damages.
Exactly.
Not him. Look what like you said, Millie, look what he's done to her business. But also her business model, like if these men were allowed on a female app, she wouldn't have an app because women don't want to be on the app with men.
Yeah, I think the judge kind of got that. He said, all right, so if you can't discriminate between men and trans women, then this app just can't work. And it's like, well, you're so close to being there. You just need to realize that they're all men and, we're done. But,
I mean, there's no one that is looking at Roxy Tickle thinking woman.
No.
No, as soon as I looked in that courtroom, you could, the size, the structure, you just go, yeah, you can tell who's male in this courtroom.
Yeah. Oh.
He acknowledges that himself, though, too, doesn't he? That he doesn't pass as a woman.
Yeah, he's written it multiple times online that he doesn't pass, will never pass as a woman. So how anyone's meant to know that he's got this weird gender identity?
He behaved man.
How you can discriminate against something that you can't even see if someone's got it. The whole thing makes no sense.
Yep.
I'm suing you on because of my gender identity, but how?
Which I can't possibly know if you have based on a photo. Yeah.
Because he's wearing makeup.
It's the con of the fucking century, the con of the history of the world.
Yeah.
Gender identity.
Yeah.
It's the biggest con, isn't it? Like, how the fuck did it get off the ground?
Yeah. People
There
who
is
I've
no such
known
thing.
for years and years now don't talk to me because I don't think, a lesbian should have to have sex with a man.
Yeah.
I think you should be chopping body parts off children.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this woman that I caught the plane down with to be on his side, I'm just thinking, we've both got kids, we're both from the same area, we've both done theatre here, we've known each other for, it's a really, really long time. Like, why is I just say that women should have rights, sex-based rights, and why do you think that this man's right to destroy any and all female businesses that don't recognise him as a woman is a human right that should exist in our law? Like, I just
make it make sense, Millie. Make it
I
make
don't know.
sense.
I don't understand. How can we be at it from completely different angles?
And it's like these other people that you and I both know, Millie, who refuse to engage with this whole debate because I just don't really have an opinion on it. And I can see both sides. And it's like, well, you have not looked into it very far at all. Like, these are the people who still think that it's all about these poor post-op transsexuals who just want to live and, they just want to live as their true selves. This is not what this is about. This is about any man who's got no change, not that it would make any difference, but any man, and that includes predatory males, of which there are many, accessing any and all female-only spaces.
They won't even that. They will not even acknowledge that. Like, if a man will become a priest to have access to children.
Yeah, exactly. Or a teacher.
Why do they think no predatory man would, and all they have to do is say they're a woman? So then no predatory men in 2024 that would just walk into the women's toilets and women go, you shouldn't be in here. Oh, but I identify as a woman. And these predatory men apparently would never do that.
But the ideology is so steep. I don't know if it's just this town, but they just seem to go along with it blindly. So that not only is, as soon as a man claims to be a woman, he's a woman. He was also a woman from the time he was a child. He was even a woman when he was impregnating his wife with their kids. And even though he's never going to have the surgery, he's probably not even going to take hormones because he likes his erections and he's into BDSM and polyamory, but now calls himself a lesbian. But that's absolutely his right, and that right should exist above any and all rights for women and children to safe spaces.
Yeah.
That's how insane the
his rights
ideology.
above everything.
Yeah.
Madness.
And it leads to men breastfeeding, and that's just I think it's just because I'm doing it at the minute. It's just really so fucking offensive. For me, it's the worst thing, the breastfeeding
And
thing.
it's not just the autogynephiles, it's the incels that hate women. They've got
the transmaxers.
Yeah, they're just hatred towards women because they're socially inept. And women don't want anything to do with them. So the problem is
people should check out transmaxing as well. And check out the male lactation fetish Reddit as well, because you'll get an insight into what these men are thinking. And it might, if you're on the fence about it, I don't think anyone watching this will be. If you're just show it to someone who is on the fence about it, because it's the most gruesome
fucking
thing.
horrendous.
I can't believe people are falling. I just can't believe anyone would fall for that.
For creating our family.
Oh, I put it over here.
The baby has been able to latch, but I've not been able to produce any milk. It's okay, because we're gonna supplement the feeding with formula so that my baby's still getting the nutrients that they need. I appreciate you so much for all your work. And I appreciate you also, baby. I couldn't have done it without you.
Of a man breastfeeding a newborn baby and thinks that that's okay. I just can't understand.
And not just everyday people, it's medical professionals helping and enabling these dudes to lactate disgusting discharge, drug-induced discharge, a minuscule amount. Like, you know yourself, Leah, how much your breasts produce. They're insane. It's phenomenal. It's amazing. It's a magical power.
Yeah.
And not only that, the breast milk adjusts to each baby and each stage and whether the baby's unwell. Like the connection between the baby and the breast milk is just insane. And
it reacts to temperature, it reacts to illness, it reacts to everything, to change the antibodies and the level of fat and water content in it. It is, I just think if we're going to throw out the mother baby diet as being sacred in society, because these men, I give up on the society, honestly.
Breastfeeding is awesome and amazing, but also it can be really hard. Really, you're waking up in the middle of the night, sometimes your t-shirt's wet, your boobs hurt, you can get a blockage. I had to spend the other day with bloody cabbage leaves in my bra. It's for them to reduce it down to a baby sucking on his nipple and then taking a picture and putting it on some perverted God knows where. It's just so frustratingly, insanely, I can't even just have
offensive, so offensive, insulting, degrading, fucking disgusting.
But not only
makes
that,
you want to scream.
But their own child that has to play into this fetish as well. So they don't care about anyone. If you don't care about your own newborn child and you have to use that child, it goes to show just how low, how narcissistic they are.
Well, there was that story like 2 weeks ago about the 50-year-old man who was getting the hormones and doing it because he wanted to breastfeed his grandchild because he hadn't gotten to do it for his own 5 children. Like, it's that thing of like, just because you might be able to do something which is going to be nothing like the natural thing, we should definitely not be doing it.
How do we as women?
My worst breastfeeding stories, I spent 3 days on an intravenous drip with mastitis. Like, it nearly killed me. Like, it's so the fact that it could become the fact that these men will fetishize any female functions just horrifies me, particularly when it involves
being enabled, encouraged, promoted as something that it's not, when it's nothing else but a sexual fetish.
How do we, as women, learn to trust these institutions again? Because I'm struggling with that. I mean, if you go into a hospital like I did when I was giving birth and you've got trans flags in the room next door, I mean, how deep inside this cult do we have to be before?
You can only imagine that, you know, during World War II with Hitler, that probably the same level of having flags everywhere, and, you know, you really can see the connection between the ideologies and the capture.
Yeah, such a really good point.
I'm wondering if there'll be a day in my life that I don't hear the words like diversity and inclusion and not shudder.
Yeah. Well, all we can do is keep going, keep getting out there.
Can we just quickly mention Desexing Society, the podcast that came out this week?
Darcy's done a great job.
So wonderful.
It's an incredible podcast, and Stacy's done a fantastic job. So it's so worth watching.
I binge watched all 8 episodes.
Yeah. Gillian Spencer was fantastic as always.
Every single
Judith
episode
Hunter.
was just brilliant, start to finish. And there was a delay between episodes 7 and 8 coming out. I think it took 2 or 3 days to come out. And, you know, when you binge watch something and you want to see the last one for this series, good news is there's going to be a series 2.
I think the day when women like Gillian Spencer are reinstated, apologised to,
indicated,
I look forward to that.
Yeah.
Really
While we're plugging things, I'd really recommend everyone go and watch on YouTube the brilliant Janet Fraser and Kat and Sarah Morgan and Vivian and all those wonderful women, Judith Hunter and Jen Speck, all the women that spoke at the parliamentary inquiry, because it was, I think, it was so good.
So what's it called? So it's a YouTube video.
It's on YouTube. Kit Kalowski put them up, so I'm pretty sure that would be a link you can find them on there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll put a link in.
You could put the link in, And also a plug for Gillian and Sal talking on the 26th of May. So that's the weekend after Speaker's Corner, isn't it?
Yeah, I will be there.
And how do people get in touch for that?
So that would be through IWD Brisbane Meanjin and McCormack. There'll be a live stream as well. I think it's midday, 26th of May.
11 a.m.
11 a.m.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sue.
Okay, good. There's a live stream because I live for live streams at the moment, obviously.
We so missed you at Glenna the other night, Leah.
We did.
And I can't wait till I can do things like that again. But also everyone who's on Twitter who's been like live streaming hearings and court cases and stuff like that, it's really great. I'm so glad that we have that connection to it, because obviously it wasn't live streamed, the tickle and giggle. And
yes, and a massive thank you again to Kat for doing that. That must have been such a difficult thing to do, the tribunal tweets,
and it just went on and on and on.
How to focus while you're doing your tweets, and she did an amazing job. Absolutely amazing.
There's also
throw your computer at the wall.
I know.
There is also a 2-hour Twitter live stream where Edie and Kit was speaking to a woman who was one of the lawyers there, who just gives a brilliant rundown of the whole tickle v giggle thing in 2 hours, which I know is a long time, but it was a lot to cover those 3 days. So she did a really good job on that, if you wanted to catch up that way. Okay.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for having a chat.
Yeah, thank
you, Leah. We hope for better times to come, and we work towards that with our.
Yeah. In the meantime, we just
keep
keep speaking the truth.
Yeah.
Come to Speaker's Corner. Come and speak the truth with us in Brisbane, and see you there. All right.
Look forward to it.
Lovely to see you.
All right then. Bye.
All right. Bye.